Well, welcome to another episode of Ask the Vice Provost. My name is Michael Dennin. I am the Vice Provost for Teaching and Learning, Dean of the Division of Undergraduate Education here at UC Irvine. And this is where I take an opportunity to have students come and visit with me and ask me questions. So I'll let the students introduce themselves.
Hello, my name is Dash Teachout. I'm a third-year English major with an emphasis on future teaching. And I work at the Office of the Vice Provost for Teaching and Learning. Really excited to be here.
Great.
And I'm Tony Gervacio. I'm a third-year Crim and Psych double major, and I work for DUE as well.
Okay, Tony, you get to go first.
Well, considering I work in your office and I see you just running back and forth
Right.
all the time, I was just curious how you manage all your time besides being a husband and a father, how do you manage to be a dean, a vice provost, and a professor?
Excellent question. I'm not sure. I have figured out how to sleep and eat. That's part of it. You know, a lot of it actually turns out to be, I have to give a shout out to Roxanne Taylor, my executive assistant. Her ability to manage my schedule is amazing because I used to, when I started as a professor, I didn't even keep a paper calendar. I could do everything just by memory until the day I almost missed a meeting. Then I started keeping a paper calendar. Eventually I did it on the computer. But yeah, without having someone who really helps with the time, and then it just all trickles down from there. So there's a team, a leadership team that works with me, and then there's all the staff, managers and directors within DUE, and their actual staff. And the things they're able to do and get done are really what make me look good. And I mean, it sounds very trite, but it really is how I think great organizations work and do really well, is it starts at the bottom and works its way up as what people are able to get done. A lot of it is also, you know, as a professor, I've always had a weird schedule. And I've always done, you know, a lot of what my job is about, to be honest, is thinking of the vision, thinking of the plan, thinking of the next thing we might do. And I've always been someone who tries to drive safely, but I'm often thinking while I'm doing that. And when I'm, you know, just sitting at home, I've always had a schedule. My kids tend to go to bed earlier than I do. I do a lot of work kind of from 10 to midnight. But it's really letting go of things, right? It's not trying to do everything yourself. You get things started, and then you have to trust the staff and the other people and the faculty you work with that it'll get done. And it may not happen exactly the way you want, and that's okay. Often it's better than the way you wanted it. So that's really a lot of it. The only thing that makes me really worried, I noticed this is something the way the world's come to. If you look around at a typical, I mean, we get it, students, don't be on Facebook, don't be doing your email in class, right? Stay focused on us because we're the most important. I will admit that there's probably too many meetings where I'm also checking email. You know, and a lot of it is in my role, I have to be at certain meetings, and often I'm hearing the same report 2 or 3 times. And you look around the room, and it really depends on the meeting. There's a mixture of people, sometimes doing emails, sometimes not. And I fear for our society because that's the way we're going. That's not a good sign. And that's the one piece I'd like to really improve, is how can I make sure I'm present at every meeting and not having to worry about emails or check things or do other things. So that's, I think, the downside where I'd like to see myself be able to improve. Great question. Okay.
Well, I'm planning on continuing on in higher education, hopefully at a doctorate level.
Okay.
What resources can students access here on campus to help figure out the next step in their education, or whether that lies here at UCI or somewhere else?
Right. So going and figuring out what to do next is hard. I do think that one of the pieces that is really helpful is if you've been able to make contact with faculty. Now, the sad thing is we've all gone the academic route, but not all of us. There are faculty who actually were in the private sector first and then joined academics. But we also, most of us have friends who are in the private sector who have gone through different routes, family members who have done different things. So we are a good resource for how you might make the decision, what might be involved, what's it really like. You know, graduate school is one of those things I semi-joke but semi-true. It's one of the few times in life you have to be dedicated to voluntary poverty. You know, if you're going to go to grad school, you're making a choice, and know what you're getting into. And it's a lot of work, and you know, understanding that, but it's very rewarding at the same time. But what it means is, if you're not truly passionate about it, right, then it's not really necessarily something you want to do. I do encourage students to take advantage here at a research university by doing research with a faculty member, whether you get in through it through UROP, our Undergraduate Research Opportunities Program, or just by talking to faculty on your own. There's a lot to be learned by doing a research project about yourself, what your interests are, what you're able to do. You know, at the nuts and bolts, there's always the Career Center, there's the academic advisors, there's student affairs advisors, there's a lot of professional resources for helping you think about that. More and more units, and this would depend on your major and the actual unit, but more and more units are really connecting with alumni and alumni mentors. And actually, by definition, you're essentially already alumni. You know, you go to the Newkirk Alumni Center and you go to the Alumni Association for UCI, and they can get you hooked up with alumni who want to give back and talk about what it's like in various careers and jobs. So that's a very much, for UCI, probably the most untapped resources are alumni. We're really trying to reach in and get their engagement up. So that's a great place to start too. And just know, I think the most important piece is that there is no wrong decision and you can always change your mind. No matter what you do, it's not like a final end-of-life commitment. My PhD advisor is a National Academy member from chemistry. Before becoming a chemist, he worked on a horse ranch, he worked in a cement factory, he dropped out of school. So he did a lot of things and then ended up in the National Academy. So there's multiple routes there.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Great question.
So I was just gonna get on a deeper level and ask you like a more important question. So the Patriots and the Falcons are gonna be at the Super Bowl. Who are you rooting for?
So one of the challenges in this question is most likely by the time we edit it, well, we've got a couple weeks, but most likely by the time it goes live, we'll know who has won. So whatever I pick here, I've got a 50-50 chance of looking bad. But I have to go with the Patriots for a couple of reasons. One is actually I do think they're a very good team, and I know the Falcons actually kind of had an impressive game. We're actually filming this the day after the championship games. They had an impressive game yesterday, but I just feel the Patriots' consistency has reached a new level the last few games. And I have to have a full disclosure, my brother's a huge Patriots fan, and two of my daughters are huge Patriots fans, so I have no choice. My wife is a huge Seattle Seahawks fan, and since they're not in it, I don't have to pick. The worst Super Bowl ever was when the Seahawks played the Patriots, because there was great division in my household. I actually happened to be flying that day, so I didn't have to be home for it, so I was lucky. But you know, sports are fun, and it's weird. I've always enjoyed football, but I've never had a favorite team, so it makes it a little easier in football season because I don't feel too overly committed. But I'm feeling good about the Patriots this year. Knock on wood, so that I don't curse anyone and make it go bad. But good question.
Well, I've been continually impressed with your dedication in previous videos to accessibility and adaptability of the learning environment to fit the changing demographics, the increased diversity here at UCI. So what are a few specific ways that UCI is planning to continue on this trajectory of creating real social mobility?
So a couple of things. That's a really good question, because one of the challenges is, I think, the biggest thing we're doing is continuing to engage faculty in the conversation. Interesting that you asked that. I struggle with how do you talk to faculty about the fact that students are different, right? And that's okay, and it's a positive and it's a strength. We can still get the same output. We can still get that same high level of excellence we've always, sort of held universities to. But how do we get them from A to B is the question. And how do you engage faculty in the conversation of getting them from A to B? And the nice thing is at UC Irvine, most faculty are very open to that question and that challenge. And they often are just like, well, I mean, like all of us, they're busy, there's a lot of time, how do I do it? Where do I find the time? And what you start to realize is it doesn't take huge changes. What it really comes down to is understanding what it is that you expect from a culture perspective for students. And what do I mean by that? So students come from high school. And most students got by, they had to do homework because it was required, but they could have gotten by just doing the work in class, because the students that come to UCI are the smartest ones. They really are. But you get here, and you're in class for maybe 3 hours, right? And many faculty just assume the students know what to do outside of class to be successful, right? And they've never had to do that before. So how do we help students understand not only that it takes 5 to 8 hours of work in this class, outside of class, but what should they really be doing? So a lot of students end up maybe doing what they did in high school. They read the book, they read the textbook, they highlight it, they mark it, but they don't know what the faculty member is looking for. Maybe they're looking for a particular type of critical reading of the book, not just reading it to get what's in it. Or maybe, you know, it's in a physics class and they're doing the homework, but they don't really know how to think about the homework, how to make sure it's more than just getting the right answer, it's also understanding the process. And this comes in just what we say in class. So I have a colleague who's really gotten very explicit, and he does some cool things. He'll say to students, this question will be on the final. Talk to your neighbor about it. Do you know how to answer it? Because, and some of my colleagues will go, oh, you're teaching to the test or you're giving away. I'm like, well, if you really want them to know that, why not tell them ahead of time so they can know it?
Yeah, more teachers should follow that.
You know? Now, from the students' side, I think part of it is also helping them understand, and this kind of last piece is, there's one of the skills we want students to learn is recognize when something that looks different is actually the same, right? So we will put things on the exam that appear to be different. Mm-hmm. And again, but we should have students practice that ahead of time, right? We can say, you know, this is the basic thing I want you to understand. Now, there's 4 or 5 different ways you might encounter this. Okay, so here's what we practiced, and we talk about it in class and we go through it in detail. Maybe I'll tell you somewhere in the next 3 assignments, you know, a question like this will show up, but I'm not going to tell you where, right? And they have to kind of look for it and be aware and learn how to apply that knowledge. And then you put one on the final that maybe looks completely different, but it's really the same thing. But you've kind of got them used to the idea that, wait, I mean, the way I tell it to my students is, every question in the final can be solved with these 6 things I've taught you. Even if it looks completely new, completely different, it's going to be one of these 6, and your job is to figure out which 6. So there's that intermediate space of, if what you want them to do is learn something new, teaching how to do that. And so these are the sort of conversations we're having with faculty around simple tricks, you know, explaining what office hours are, right? I mean, many faculty say come to office hours, but don't explain what it's for or what it is. So there's little simple things, and then there's slightly harder, more complicated things. But I think it's just constantly having this conversation among faculty and faculty with students, and really keeping that conversation in front of everybody. So good question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any more questions? I think we just planned for those, right? Yeah? Okay. Well, then we have to do our usual social media announcements. We can follow myself at Dennin Michael on Twitter. I'm also on Facebook at Prof. Dennin Michael.
Definitely follow.
Yeah, we have the Office of the Vice Provost of Teaching and Learning Twitter account and Facebook pages. And then this is all going to be appearing on our YouTube channel, which once we get 100 subscribers, we'll have a really easy to understand name. But for now, you just have to look for it. Okay, well, thank everyone for their time and look forward to the next Ask the Vice Provost.